So House of the Dragon's fourth episode aired Sunday night, and it's a pretty good one. Very controversial, I'm sure, very scandalous. Of course, this is because, and obviously spoilers, but this is because when Matt Smith's character, Daemon Targaryen, comes back to the Red Keep after years of fighting against the Triarchy and the Crab Feeder and the Stepstones, he returns victorious. He bends the knee to his king and brother, and then later that night takes Rhaenyra out for a night on the town. Secretly and illicitly. They're both in disguises. He's wearing a hooded cloak. She's wearing peasant clothes that make her look like a boy. They go out amidst the fire breathers and the drunkards and the whores and the merrymakers, and they see a mummers play. People dressed up as her, as Rhaenyra, and as the king, and they're sort of in this play joking around about the succession. Everyone loves Rhaenyra, they say, but can she be a powerful queen, or will she be feeble? And all the commoners shout feeble, and Rhaenyra gets a real look at what the common people think of all of this, which is new for her. What else is new for her is sex. And after all this goes down, Daemon takes her to a pleasure house, and before you know it, surrounded by all these naked people, and she says, "What is this place?" And he says, "It's where you go to take what you want." And then they're kissing and pulling off clothing, and it's almost like they're about to do the deed when something comes over Daemon, and he kind of starts avoiding her kisses, and then he slams his palms on the wall and storms off, just leaving her there like half naked, confused, alone in a dangerous city by herself. Unfortunately, this is all in view of public. Their disguises at this point have been off since they entered the pleasure house. Lots of people have seen them. So, of course, later it comes to the king's attention by way of Otto Hightower, the king's hand. Before that happens, though, she goes back to the castle and pulls Sir Criston Cole, her personally handpicked Kingsguard, into her room, and he puts up a bit of a fight, but not quite the fight he put up against, Daemon at the tourney. Pretty soon, he's out of his armor, they're out of their clothing, and she's losing her virginity. And for all we know, so is he, but I sort of doubt it. He's quite a bit older and has, until recently, not had a vow of chastity. And as we're often reminded in this show, men are much more. It's much more frowned upon for women to go around having sex with whoever they want than for men. And yes, this ends up being a big scandal. When Hightower brings the news to Viserys, he's really pissed off. He thinks it's just rumor mongering. He wants to, gouge the eyes out of whoever said this. But Hightower says there's multiple witnesses. This is not just one person. This is not some agenda. This actually happened, and you need to deal with it. So the Kingsguard drag a very hungover Daemon Targaryen into the Iron Throne Room. Iron Throne Room? The throne room with the Iron Throne in it. And Viserys questions his brother, who doesn't deny having sex with Rhaenyra, even though they haven't had sex. He doesn't admit to it either, but he does say that Viserys should give him Rhaenyra as his bride. And Viserys is not too happy about the idea of his brother and his daughter hooking up, even though, as Daemon points out, this is the tradition of their house. Well, I don't think it's been a tradition for quite some time. It's one thing if it's cousins, right? Like cousins, that happens all the time. Cousins are always hooking up with cousins, but uncles and nieces, it is a little weird. So anyways, he is pissed off at Viserys, or at Daemon, and exiles him again. And this gets into one of the things that I find a little odd about this show. Like, it's a slow burn. It moves slowly, and yet things happen. A great deal of time passes over these 4 episodes. The first time Viserys exiled his brother at the end of episode 1 over his party that he threw when Viserys' wife and son died. Well, then it's been years of showtime where Daemon's been fighting in the Stepstones and along with Lord Corlys, and they defeat the crab feeder, and he comes and he returns and he's welcomed back, and then like a day later he's exiled again. So it's kind of like a lot happens in very few episodes. A lot of time passes, a lot of big story beats occur, but at the same time, you know, you're not moving. The episodes themselves aren't super action packed. They move kind of at a slower pace. And while all this stuff is happening, these big events are happening, like the death of the queen, the marriage of Alicent Hightower to King Viserys I, the basically naming Rhaenyra as heir apparent. There's lots of these sort of big events, but we don't have as much we don't have all those detailed, meaty character development things going on between these big events that we would have, say, in Game of Thrones. Because like so much happens in a few months of the story of Game of Thrones, right? Like you get to know all the Stark kids, you get to see, you know, Jon go up to the wall, you get to see Ned and the girls go down to King's Landing, you get to know all about how horrible Joffrey is and Cersei, you get a lot of Tyrion, so just in the very first book or season of Game of Thrones, not a lot of time passes, maybe a few months or something, but you have this sort of rich character study for a lot of different characters. And because you get to see them kind of, you know, not day to day, but over the course of a whole season, you get a very limited amount of time. But you get a lot of character development. Whereas here, the character's development sort of rushes ahead. Because the length of the story is much longer. It's years and years and years, rather than in Game of Thrones, which is just really a couple years. So, you know, Rhaenyra is several years older now than she was in episode 1, but looks exactly the same. Although in two more episodes, we will have another bigger time jump where she will be recast, along with Alicent, the actress who plays Alicent, and a couple other actors. Most of the actors remain the same, but several major characters are recast for this time jump, which is also jarring. So it's just, I don't dislike it necessarily, but it definitely takes something that was good about Game of Thrones and gets rid of it. And in other ways, it adds things that I like. I don't want to say more, but that I find quite good. Like it's a smaller focus on a smaller like a smaller, more intense focused cast, right? It's mostly this family and some of the people, the lords and ladies and whatnot around them. It's mostly the Targaryen family, the Hightowers, and these people in court, which means that they can focus on those characters a lot more and tell a more contained story. But yeah, the way that the story moves along is very different. And that's not just because there's not as much action. I'm sure there'll be lots of action to come. It is really how fast and slow it moves all the time. And it's just a little, I don't know, it's a little odd. It's a little different. So I guess I'm still making my mind up on it. And I'm sure I'm not the only one who feels that, though, who feels that sort of tug of war or seesaw effect between things, lots of things happening really fast, but the show still moves very slowly. In any case, the other big things that happen, Viserys is pissed also at Rhaenyra, says that, you know, you are my political headache, which is a great line, and tells her she's going to marry the son of the Sea Snake, the son of Lord Corlys, and there's nothing she can do about it. At the beginning of the episode, she was trying to pick her own husband, and then she had all these suitors who were all ridiculous and old men and boys, and she just got fed up with the whole thing. Which is, I have to just point out, most royal children in feudal times, and most noble children, and a good portion of most everyone didn't get to pick their spouse. Certainly not based on love. I'm sure if you had a good idea of a strong political alliance, and you were like, hey, Dad, I think I should marry him because he comes from this rich house and would make our position stronger, then maybe you'd get to pick, but you wouldn't be able to be like, I fell in love with Prince Charming over here, and and this is the same for boys and girls. It's not like the men were able to just go off and pick whoever they wanted to marry. Some did, and it was like there were some English kings who, when got married, outside of like the tradition of these big alliances, and that caused a lot of actual political headaches and disruption. So she was given a pretty progressive and amazing opportunity by her father, and she sort of threw that away because she's spoiled. I get it, it's fine. She's a great character, but she's spoiled. And so he sets that for her, but then she says, okay, but you need to get rid of your hand, who is clearly in this for himself. And at first Viserys is like, well, everybody's in this for, everyone's self-interested. And she's like, well, I mean, come on, think about it. Think about what he's been doing. And he realizes at last, I mean, maybe this is a truth that he's known all along, but he realizes at last that, yeah, Otto sent Alicent to him in the midst of his grief to comfort him and seduce him. And he married her, even though it was certainly not the most advantageous marriage that he could have picked. So he, he thanks Otto for his service and tells him basically, your ambition has clouded your judgment and I can't trust you anymore and you're out. So he's out. There'll be a new hand. But I think obviously he's made enough of an impact at this point that it doesn't matter so much. He's already got his daughter as queen. His grandson is the only male heir. His power in court is still very, very much a real thing. Now, I will say, I don't think that it's that Hightower is necessarily that bad of a guy. It's not crazy. Like he didn't arrange any murders or poison anyone or like do anything horrible to get his daughter on the throne. He manipulated the king. It's not cool, but it's not a red wedding, he didn't betray someone to the degree of like a Littlefinger betrayal. Although I think he would, given the opportunity. He's definitely that kind of guy. None of the characters are really, like, not yet anyways, horrible to the extent of some of the ones we've met in Game of Thrones. But none of them are like as good or noble or like you want to root for them as much either. Even Rhaenyra, is probably the closest thing to a protagonist in this show, is deceitful and seduces Kristen Cole, who's made a vow of chastity and who could get in really big trouble. But she's done this, in her own self-interested way. Although he got his out of it, she's put him at great risk, and she's playing her own set of games. So ultimately, at the end, she's given what I jokingly called Potion B, or Plan B, whatever, an abortion potion to get rid of any unintended consequences, which is interesting because she didn't have sex with her uncle, but she did have sex, so she still needs this if she wants to hide this fact from the public. And looks like next week they're going to go try to marry her off to Sir Rhaenyra. I get all these Targaryen and Velaryon names mixed up, but to Sir Corlys's son, or Lord Corlys's son. And it looks like some other crazy shit's going to go down. And it's next week's our last episode with these actors before the 10-year time jump between episode 5 and 6. So that'll be interesting. We'll have lots to talk about. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe and all those things. I really appreciate that. And yeah, see you next time. Peace.